It's been a bit.
Just a bit.
It's been a little bit. We've had a lot going on.
It's been crazy.
Yeah, yeah. We've not recorded any fresh episodes for a couple of weeks because we've both had a heavy workload,
Yeah.
just managing our project files, but we've both also been navigating staff and team growth and and movements.
Yes, movements. Yeah, that would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, what's been going on your end?
Oh my gosh, it has been really busy. Busy with, like you say, with job files and trying to navigate that side of things. But also, we had full-time team member leave, who was our drafts person. So that kind of leaves me to pick up the slack while looking for other people and training other people. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's been a bit full on.
yeah. You. That's the thing when you have a business is that if any cog falls off, then it's up to you to pick up that slack if you're not
Yeah,
a big enough company yet that you've got other people to do that for you. When
yeah, that's it.
it's a small business problem, isn't it?
It really is a small business problem. And, when there are such few numbers, you have one person step out of that and you're just missing such a massive chunk of your, I don't know, of your people power. And yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. You realize how much you know, you I guess rely on that person to do their role, but
Yeah,
also, yeah, because I'm kind of at the other side of that is I'm putting on people for the first time,
yeah,
and the challenge in when any small business is putting on people is that it's hard to let go of the responsibilities because it's your business and you do things a certain way and you uphold a certain level of quality.
yeah,
But you want to put on you need the help. You need someone to help you with the
you do.
workload when you're growing, but it's hard to let go of that. And so it's a bit of a hurdle to get to that point where you're actually hiring someone in the first place. But
Yeah,
then when you do, you're like, you very quickly forget how much you were doing before. And when that person then moves on, you're like, they were doing so much that I now need to pick up again. And now I'm back to square one, which was the reason I hired in the first place.
yeah. And when you're picking up the work, well, actually, when you bring on somebody new, it also, like, while you're going through that initial training phase, whether the person has come on and they're experienced in the role or whether they're quite new to the role, it doesn't really matter because you still need to go through that training process. You need to train the person that's come into the business in the way that you do things and the way that your company works and your company's processes. So
And your
it,
expectations.
and that's exactly right, yeah, and your expectations. And then you almost have to, well, it diminishes your output for a little while because you're kind of picking up the work, but you're also working with this other person, training them. So yeah, all of those things need to be taken into consideration, and it can make it difficult for a little while. But it's almost like the back step that the business needs to take in order to make that leap forward.
Yeah.
You just can't see it at the time when you're actually in the muck going through it.
Yeah. And, your clients, like I've found that with growing my team, I've tried to be as open in my communication with
Yeah.
my clients as much as possible. But at the
Yes,
end of the day, that's not your client's problem. They
that's it
still have a
exactly.
result and you've still
Yeah,
got to try and meet that demand and meet their timelines. But it's challenging when it's just you or a small team and you're trying to keep up with you don't necessarily have control over when projects are going to either land or go ahead or reach a certain milestone, and they all seem to do it at the same time. So, you know, you're sitting there going, okay, well, I've got a bit of time now, let's drive some more business and all my team's in order. And then all of a sudden, all of the jobs come through at once, and they've all make their decisions at the same time, it would seem, and are all ready for you to get back to them yesterday. And then, of course, that's when you lose a staff member, or it's time to put on a new staff member, and it doesn't take long to unravel and quickly become quite overwhelming. But that's not the client. I think the biggest challenge I find is still upholding that level of quality and responsiveness with your client. But like you say, you've got to, it does slow you down because you've now got to train the new person and spend more time with them. And I don't know what your hours have been like lately.
Huge.
I've been
Absolutely
doing some 1am, 1:30am efforts this week, because the only time I've got to actually work on client project work is after hours, when I don't have to then be, you know, working on the business. Work in the business at night.
I know the hours that I've been putting in recently have just, they've been massive. But, you know, weekend work, late nights, all the things. But it's just, you know, you've obviously got a level that you want to achieve, and a level that you want to keep your work at and your output at, and not let clients down that you've brought on. But it's that fine line between informing the client of what's happening, but also not making it their problem.
And not looking like you've not got it under control as well, because I think that fine line of, I like to be really transparent, and I like to think that transparency is a big value. Sorry, I feel like I keep bringing it back to my business, only because that's the easiest way for my head to communicate.
Absolutely.
my point. And that's my experience, I guess, as well. But you don't want to look incompetent, but you want to be transparent.
Yes.
And so, how much do you share with your clients without then, you know, like TMI? or are they going to then turn around and go, well, that's not my problem? Whereas some other people might be like, well, I'm really glad you told me, I understand, I get it now, you know.
It is a very fine line, I think. I mean, for us personally, within complete approvals, we will just inform our clients of lead times, and when it gets to the point that we're really having to push them out, for our regular builder clients, we would basically just jump on a call and say, look, this is what's going on in our world right now, and the impact of that is that drafting lead times are going to push out. We are working in the background to change this and to bring a solution to it. But considering the industry at the moment, trying to find people that are willing to, you know, come on board, and good people that we want in our business.
That's the difference.
It's difficult. That's exactly right. It's difficult because there really isn't a lot of drafts people out there that are looking for work at the moment. Well, a lot of people actually looking for work at the moment. So it's difficult to find, one, people that are actually looking, and two, that are the type of people that you want to bring onto your team. And I'm not willing, just for the sake of getting through work, to bring on anyone. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly right from the beginning.
Because it can be more destructive.
Well, that's it. It's going to be, exactly. It'll be more destructive, but it becomes a waste of time if you're just going through the motions, and you're bringing somebody on board, and you know that they're probably not the right person, but hey, that'll do for now. That's not really how we work. We want the best team possible working on our clients' projects, so that we can output the best level possible for our clients. And I'm not willing to compromise on that.
Yeah, fair call. And I think your clients would appreciate that as well.
And they do. Every time we have a chat with them, well, every time, it doesn't happen very often, but when we have a chat with them recently about the drafting lead time push out and why it was happening, they were all very understanding because they know the level that we like to work to.
And is that your clients being predominantly builders or businesses,
yes.
right? So not necessarily the homeowner directly?
Not necessarily, yeah. It's It's not necessarily, the homeowner directly. Our business is made up, our business client base is made up mostly of other businesses. We're very much a B2B, but the clients that we do take on that are homeowners, they kind of come on board with no expectation of what drafting lead times look like because they haven't been working with us before. Whereas our business clients will know how long we've taken in the past to get through drafting projects, and they have that expectation. So communicating to them that this is going to change is really important. But then we also communicate to our homeowners that come on board with us how long each part of the process will take right at the very beginning, just to kind of try and manage client expectations and to keep them informed of what's going on.
Yeah, it's so important to do. And what makes it tricky is when you get a surprise. And so it's all very good and well being able to manage and try and set that expectation at the start. But I know we've spoken about in previous episodes about things do come out of left field. And yes, you communicate it as you go as well. Bit tricky when homeowners are sort of planning on one thing and then it goes left field, or you lose a staff member or something just happens in business which isn't perceived to be the client's problem.
Yeah.
But it's very much something that's happened and it does have an impact.
Yes.
And managing that through is sometimes a challenge. Whereas with your business clients, it's like your builders and stuff, even if something is slower than what they're used to, they might get a little bit disgruntled, but they also have had the benefit of seeing you when you are when you are functioning normally.
Yeah, that's right.
Phase. They know how efficient you can be. So they're a little bit more forgiving of that. And because they're in the industry, they know it too, because they're probably experiencing similar delays and heavy demand at the same time as we are. Yes. And so they totally get it. But then, I find it's a different ballgame when you're then dealing with homeowners direct. It's maybe for some of them, their one and only project, or, it's been a long time and under completely different circumstances since they've done their last project. Having those conversations I find the most challenging part of the role at times.
Yes.
Because it just
they are confronting conversations to have.
It's confronting because you just don't want to let people down.
Yes.
I don't know if that's something I need to work through personally, but I think we're all faced with it at some point.
Yeah. I know things have been pretty difficult and pretty full on for you as well, Bron, but what's been going on in your world recently?
Well, I'm just growing a business for the first time and learning as I go, and it is a roller coaster of highs and lows, and I actually love it. I love sitting amidst the challenges and the undulations of business. I actually quite get off on that, but the bit that I don't enjoy is exactly what we're talking about, is then that confrontation with clients. And because I hold such a high standard of myself and the work that I want to put out, I'm at the point where I've had to take on team, which is great. That's what I want. So not complaining ever, but just talking about the challenges that come up. And, everything you've said, when you take on your team, you spend a lot of time getting them into the way you do things, which of course is never going to be good enough for you doing it yourself. I think you're going to feel. But, you've got to at some point hand it over and trust that people will do, do you justice, and it also bring in their ways of doing things as well. So it's a good learning opportunity. So I find that mentally I've been quite challenged, and my bandwidth has been spread just like at maximum stretch, because it's also across client projects, in addition to now learning how other people operate and incorporating that into your business, and bettering your business with other people's skill sets, whilst also training them as to the expectation that you have for your business, and how you want to be treating your client projects, and also your other business affiliations, my builders and my suppliers, and all the rest of it. And as you said, you've got to take a couple of steps backwards for the long-term goal of taking leaps forward. So I've very much been sitting in that, and it just happens to be whilst a lot of projects are nearing their deadline as far as construction, and I found that the other part of that is being from my perspective, in the first half of the year, a lot of the builders were they had a bit more time on their hands I don't want to say that, because that's definitely not the whole industry. The art industry has still been booming, and it's been hectic, but within that there is ebbs and flows, and this is always how it's been. But you get waves of clients at different stages, and I feel in the first half of the year, the builders, it was their lull a little bit. And then because us designers were getting all the new leads from the start of the year, and all the new projects, and all of the in the early design stages, and now obviously all of those are coming through, and now the builders are starting to really, most of my builders are basically booked now until January next year. So and I'm talking for renovation projects, so new builds, different ballgame. There's a lot of different models in the industry, but I'm talking renovation work. And so now all of a sudden there's an additional pressure put on my business to for builders now wanting all of their stuff like yesterday. You're working through all of your projects, and you give them all sort of fair time as best you can. If there's a couple that are a little bit more urgent, that you're trying to get through those quicker. But then all of a sudden one of your builders is like, okay, we've got to change in our schedule. We now want to get this one out here. We need that paperwork like now. And you're like, well,
but that's not due for another however long.
That's
and
right,
all of a sudden you've got to change everything up as well. And you're still going through the process of bringing on teams, so you're like, oh, holy shit, how are we going to make this work?
Exactly. I'm trying to offload bits that I can, that I know my team are capable of. And obviously the more I'm training and working, and the longer they're working with me, they're going to be capable of more quicker. And it's going to, you're putting that time in because it's an investment of your time, because you know that it's going to give you better output in the long run. But in the short term, it's actually, it's chaos, because it slows you down. You're not getting output out as quickly as what you once would. Oh no, I didn't get my phone. My bad. You're not getting output. You're not getting that output out as quickly as you once would, and that then plays on your mental bandwidth as well, because it's just another stressor in the background, and you can get into this state of overwhelm really quickly, whereas you've got
absolutely very quickly,
so quickly, and you've got all these tasks ahead of you, both client work and business stuff, and they're all as important as the next. There's no one client project that's more important than the other, regardless of timeline. And but it's really important that you train your new team, because that is for the benefit of your clients. Everything we do is for the benefit of our clients. And I think we were sort of talking off air before about, how do you, you've got to have the client feel like they're the only client in the world, but so society tells us. And you want to give your clients your best service, of course. the reality is they're not your only client.
Absolutely.
Because if they were, you wouldn't have a viable business. So you need to have X amount of projects.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
The door to be able to pay the bills, and and then you grow your team to be able to service the clients. But then you need X amount of clients coming in again to be able to then pay that next level of expenses. And so it's the juggling act that it's not the client's problem, this stuff. That's a business problem, but it's very much the reason why you're then slowed down on client projects, because you're juggling and managing all of that. And if you're doing it for the first time because you're a new business, you're learning all of that as well. Simple things like, how do I set up an employee on my accounting software? What are the forms that I need to get them to fill out? What are the legal contracts that I need to have in place? I'm not a lawyer, and that stuff bores the crap out of me. So it really challenges my mental bandwidth to be taking the time. I don't want to do it, so I resist it anyway, but then I finally bite the bullet and do it. And it takes a whole day or two out of me just to get my head around it, and because I want to get it right. I don't want to leave myself open. I need to protect the business. I also want to do the right thing by the employee or the contractor or the client. So, all of that stuff is important, equally as important as your client projects, because it's all for them. But then you've still got to keep the client projects moving because your builders are screaming at you, the homeowners are screaming at you.
In amongst all of that.
So, gosh, and I've had these conversations with the builders that we work with as well, because they go through similar stuff to every small business. Like, even if you're not in the building industry and you're listening to this, these are growing pains that we all go through. And there's probably people listening that are far surpassed this, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember those days. And I feel like we're such small fish in a big ocean at this stage, but this is just where we're at the minute.
Yeah. That's exactly right. No. But, you've got to put all the things in place and go through all of these things so that you can grow and become a bigger fish in the big pond. But it's just a matter of getting there, and it's a matter of putting all of the right things in place so that you can just keep moving forward.
That's it. I think a lot can be said for you're going to inadvertently make mistakes along the way because you are doing things for the first time. And
of course,
there's probably going to be some ass-kicking moments as well. Like, you're going to get a disgruntled client because you've let them down, and you've let them down, and it's not been intentional. It's been a repercussion of the situation and the environment that you're unfamiliar with. That's how we learn. But if that event doesn't occur, then you don't learn, and you can't make things better.
Yes.
I just don't want to let anyone down.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I have.
It's one of those ones where you just.
Sorry, you were going to say.
Yeah. And it is, no, we are very lucky that we have great clients. But even the great clients, I suppose, when you kind of get to the pointy end of things, they get really excited about things, and rightfully so, because it's a pretty exciting thing, which we've spoken about previously as well on other episodes. But I feel like they have, as understanding as they might be, they also have limitations on their patience, and I get it. I really do. And like when you say that you'd have disgruntled clients, well, sometimes they're going to call and they're not going to be happy, and because of all these things going on in the background, it is like you said, Bron, you have let them down. So when they're making those comments and you're on that phone call with them, you really just have to cop it on the chin and just apologize, because it is something that's out of your control, but at the same time, it's also something that will benefit the business and will benefit your clients down the track. It's going through the shit is the hard part.
It's a really good point, because I've said to people in the past about like when when shit happens on site, for example, and it's not necessarily the issue that causes the initial upset with the client, but what tends to happen is however that issue is dealt with is the thing that the client then remembers. And it's not actually the initial fuck up. So there could be like a mess up on site and the client will get angry and go to the builder, say, and then the builder has two options. They can either say, yes, you're right, this was a mistake, let me rectify that as quickly as possible for you, or they can get on their defense and they can come up with all the excuses and then drag their feet fixing it and try to do the blame game. And you know, it's not the actual thing, it's how it was dealt with that is what gives the client the overall impression of that company. And just then when you said what you said, I kind of feel like it's the same thing if we're in that situation. Like it's either a client's going to get disgruntled because there's so much emotion and excitement and hype, and it's a long process. They've been waiting a long time. It's getting near the end. The closer to the end it gets, or the closer to construction it gets, the more emotional they're going to get. And you are just probably copying their stress and frustration as well. And I feel horrible that we then contributed to that, but sometimes it's just how it goes. And so, yeah, you've got two choices in that moment as well. You can cop it on the chin and apologise and sort of put things into place to how you're going to get the result as quickly as possible for them within the confines of what you can do, or you can sit there making excuses and then resent it and it goes on the too hard basket and then you cause more angst and hardship. But that's a really hard thing to do. And I think people resist admitting fault because they see it as a weakness. You know, we're the company, we're doing what we can, and we can't be seen to be hopeless. Whereas if you just own it, and people will get that you're human, and I think energy can be quite transparent. And if you're genuinely sorry, which I believe most people would be, people will pick up on that as well, and then they might back down and go, okay, I get it. Like they know they're doing their best, and they might be a little bit more forgiving. But it's hard. It's a hard thing to do for people.
It is definitely a hard thing to do, but you know, there are so many moving parts in the industry that we work in, and the very best laid plans, the very best procedures, and you know how it's all going to work, and you can do all of those things, and you can lay out your plans as best as possible to the same way that you have done however many times in the past, and it's worked really, really well. And then shit happens, and you have to just deal with it and work through it and work out how you can possibly stay on this track of getting the client the best outcome possible, but now almost kind of sidestepping things in a way and trying to work out there and then how we're going to make it work. And, you know, the best laid plans are fantastic and all, but sometimes it just goes to shit and you just got to work out what's next and how do we move forward.
Do you know my biggest challenge with that is that when I go to rectify, like if I've started to fall behind with one project, you then all of a sudden the temptation is to quickly throw all your energy into that to get that one happening. But while you're doing that, you then like 3 other projects then get into that same hole because you were going to work on those ones as well. And yes, it's such a learning curve.
It just snowballs. It really does.
You do, and you're like, have I overcommitted? Should I not have taken on this many clients? But then you're like, but if I didn't take on the clients, I wouldn't be able to cover the expenses of what I need to cover to run the business to the level that I need to.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're not alone.
Yeah. I'm sure. I am so sure that we are not alone. I'm sure many people have either been there before or are going through it right now.
Yeah. I wish there was like some magical way that clients could be a fly on the wall in the day in the life of us sometimes. Just like some days we'll sit down, you know, let's call it, I don't know, nominal 9 a.m. More often than not, it's 2 hours before that. But let's say you sit down and start your day at 9 a.m. and you're like, right, I've got this project I'm going to work on, I've got this project I'm going to work on. And you could be like, you can turn off your phone, you can not look at your emails, and you can get on with that work, which would probably be the recommended way of actually tackling that and getting on with it. But the reality is your head is not necessarily going to be there as well, because you're thinking, you know, I know that such and such is meant to be emailing me this morning, and I know that this job is out on site and that job's out on site, and what if they need me? So that's the reason why you then don't sit there with your phone off and your email off, because there might be something really urgent come up that you're needed for. But then it's a balancing act, because then you leave your phone on, you've got to have the discipline to actually not look at it unless it is an emergency. Maybe that's just how my brain works. I do get easily distracted. But even if I do sit there...
I am very much the same.
Yeah, okay, good. It's not just me.
No.
Yeah, maybe that's just society these days with feeling like our phones are a part of us. We can't go without them.
Yeah. It's almost, you know, you put everything into it and you're 100% focused, and then all of a sudden I think it gets to the point that your brain just needs a break. And it starts thinking about all the other things that you could possibly be looking at instead of concentrating on what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
But it is, you're right, a very, very much a discipline thing.
Yeah. I find and that's why I'm working the late hours, because that is the only time I actually I get a bit of a second wind in the evening, and then it's like I'm first thing in the morning again. I'm charged and my concentration is there, and I can work for hours, and it's great because then I'm not getting interrupted by emails and phone calls and just day-to-day stuff as well. The thing when you're working from home is that, you know, got the dog going nuts at stuff next door, or, you know, I'll get a delivery, or the cars pull up next door and Morgan goes off his rocket. They're all these little things that distract you, and the second you walk away from your desk and then come back, it takes a good 10 minutes to sort of go, okay, where was I again? And okay, let's just refocus. And, you know, when you're drafting, as you would know, detailing plans, it's we spoke about it, it's the most important part, I think, of a designer's role for a smooth construction on site, to make sure nothing's missed. And it's not just a case of sitting down and drawing some plans. It's cross-referencing with your spec sheet to make sure that you've written that code on that one correctly. It's then checking the product sheet for that particular fitting to make sure that it's all to scale, and that you've got all your clearances around the appliances, and you've got, you know, that it's not just a case of quickly drawing it up. And I love it when clients go, well, can't you just do that little bit? Can't you just do the kitchen bit so that we know so that we can give that to the cabinet maker? Well, yeah, but that's not a quick, there's no such thing as a quick this or a quick that. And that's why I made the find the wall comment. I wish they could sit there and watch you do a project and see. I think I spent like 40 minutes yesterday removing a couple of vertical towel bars off 2 bathrooms and then replacing it with some rope hooks. I'd basically completed these plans, and then the change was made. So, you know, I've gone into the spec sheet and I've removed the old ones. That's quick and easy. I've then put the new ones in, but I've had to go to the supplier website, find the specs, download the stuff, put it into the spec sheet, then go to the plans, take off the existing things, which of course then sets all my dimension lines into a frenzy, because they're like, hang on, there's something here we're meant to be dimensioning, which isn't there anymore. And then you put in the 2 new road hooks, and then they're at different heights because it's a different fixture. And then you're moving all your dimension lines and everything. And, you know, any of these things on its own is no big deal, but collectively it's and it's not just there's doing the action, but you've also got to be mentally really thinking about it, because you're like, okay, so I've replaced this with this. Now, what am I going to need? I'm going to need the product sheet. I'm going to need to make sure that the dimensions, and if it's an electrical change, okay, so I need to make sure that, it just, it's the mental bandwidth that I feel slows you down sometimes, because you don't want to be rushing through this, because that's when stuff gets missed. And so many of us fall into the trap of just quickly get it done and get it out. But that's when mistakes happen, and then it costs you more time out on site, which then pulls you off the next lot of jobs that you're working at, and it can be a vicious cycle.
That's it.
How do you explain that to clients and have them actually understand and care?
I don't think it's one of those things that you can. I don't think it's something that they can fully comprehend unless they have been in a role similar doing that type of work, because the level of concentration while you're in that job and you're detailing is so huge, because you really have to be in it to make sure that you're getting all of those tiny little things across all the different types of plans and spec sheets and product pages and all of those things that go into it to produce the final outcome. But unless I think you've been in there and done it, it's really hard to understand what actually goes into it. Yeah.
Even I forget myself sometimes, like when I'm scheduling jobs or when I'm allocating time, I'm like, okay, well, I've got, a kitchen, a bathroom and an ensuite. So it's just 3 rooms that I need to detail. And then there's a few other fixtures and fittings around the house, like flooring and cornice and skirtings and that kind of stuff, paint. And I'm like, okay, so that's pretty straightforward. I can do that. And then you start working on it, and then you're like, okay, all of a sudden I've just lost 4 hours getting this one detail around how this kitchen bench transitions into this other kitchen bench, which are 2 different materials, and how that's going to look. And then you're updating your 3D model as well, by the way, because you need to know that it's working, but also you want it to look nice. You've got nice pictures for the client to see so they can really understand the intention, and then, of course, that you can translate that to your trades on site. So there's no interpretation, they all understand it, and you literally lose hours, but you don't skip over that stuff, because that's the difference between it going down smoothly or not. And if you don't do that detail, it comes back to you later anyway. Like homeowners want the best result, but we've spoken about money before, and you get what you pay for. Well, you can apply the same logic to time as well. If you rush me, you're going to get a rush result, and it's going to be on your quality.
Yes.
If you allow me to take the time and get it right,
100%.
And trust that I'm not doing a piss take. And I think that's the trickiest thing, because there's probably people that would be taking the piss and just dragging their feet on it and whatever. So it's just such a a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, I know you're very much the same as me, is that if it gets to the point where you've got a squeaky wheel, then you feel like you've let them down in your process.
Yeah.
And you get so angry and narky with yourself for it getting to that point.
Yep.
And when you say, Bron, that you hate it when you've got a squeaky wheel, that's why. Because you feel so strongly about giving the client a really good experience and getting the best outcome for them, that when you feel like they've got to that point where they have to harass you, even though it may or may not be justified, let's just put that out there as well.
Yep, good call.
It's almost like you've let them. It's almost like you've let them down, and that's what I get really annoyed at myself for, because I don't want it to get to that point. I want to be ahead of the game all the time.
Yep. Agree, 100%. That's so funny with the justified bit, because some people are squeaky wheels a lot quicker than other people are squeaky wheels. But then you don't want to take advantage of the people that are more patient, and that's that upsets my mental bandwidth more than, like, obviously you can be quite reactive when people are being, making more noise. But then I instantly go, okay, well, what about this person that's been so patient waiting in the wings, and it's you inadvertently let that person wait in the wings because they're not causing you problem. But you don't want to take advantage. Then I actually beat myself up as well, going, I feel like I'm taking advantage of that person that's been so patient, but I know that they're not as urgent. The client that has said to me, they've actually communicated with me, no hurry, we're not in a rush, we know you're busy, get to it when you get to it. And so then you've got the other client that is like, we have to be in by this date and blah, 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 blah. So you do prioritise your jobs in that way because you're like, okay, well, we have a deadline here. Yes. This one's flexible. So, yes, I'm going to put that one first, even if that one came in a couple of weeks early, because you want to meet the deadlines and you want to try and make it all flow. But then I still am like, but that person also came in a couple of weeks earlier, and I don't want to take advantage of the fact that they, because they might not be aware of how long things take either. And then it's not until they get in the process that they're like, they might then resent you because they're like, well, I've had that happen too, where they've gotten the process and they weren't in a hurry, but then now they realise how long things take and they're like, oh, well, we really wanted to be here. We didn't think it was going to take this long. And all of a sudden it's your fault, even though they had said we're not in a hurry and we don't mind when it happens. That can change very quickly as well. So
certainly can. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just one of the challenges.
It's that balancing
of being in a client-driven industry. And at what level because we were also talking about off air about, the delays and the price increases over the last few years and how us as an industry are full aware of the reality of price increases and time delays, but it seems that it's only just now really thoroughly filtering down to the general public, and now that some hard evidence and some stats are coming out over the last couple of years about builders falling off the perch, how much like price comparisons between builds over X amount of years. This hard evidence is coming out now that the general public is now going, it wasn't a load of hogwash. It wasn't people just trying to take advantage. This is actually what's been happening. And we're like, welcome to the party. But I kind of feel like it's like that.
That's it.
It's kind of like that with demand as well. I feel like I'm sick of saying to people, we're such in demand at the moment. We're just so busy. We're doing our best to keep up with the workload that we've got. But the reality is this is the demand on the industry and things are taking longer. And it doesn't matter if it's me or another designer or if that builder or that builder, you're going to experience the same across the board anyway. So on one hand, it's like, where do I hold steady and be firm that, no, this is just the reality of the situation. You need to put your patient pants on versus this is not the standard that I like putting out there and you're justified in your complaint. And I struggle with sitting in the middle sometimes because I don't want to let people down. I am so heavily client focused, but is it a little bit justified because this is the reality of the situation? It's just
we tend to qualify people right at the beginning and just give them our worst case scenario for lead times. Like, this is where we're at. Does that work with your schedule? And if no, well, I'm sorry, that's the best that we can do right now. You may need to approach somebody else out there because we cannot do any more than what we can do. And if that works with their schedule, okay, well, let's move forward with the project then.
Do you factor in a contingency with those predicted timelines that you give the client as well?
Lead times?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We do work on absolute worst case scenario. I prefer to give my clients worst case scenario, and if we get it done quicker, well, we come out smelling like roses and the client gets a nice surprise because we can get it done quicker than what we said we were going to. rather than the opposite. I would definitely not go down the path of the opposite and not putting that contingency in and then having to go back to the client and have that conversation, whereas I was a little bit out with my prediction on when we could get to your work. Probably going to have to wait for another few weeks. So, I definitely build that in at the very beginning. But again, it goes down what we've been talking about the whole episode is that sometimes shit just happens. So you can build in contingencies and you can, have your very best intentions that you are giving a realistic deadline, but sometimes, not very often, but sometimes it can go to shit. But that's how we're kind of dealing with it. Is we're qualifying that right from the beginning because we just don't want to let people down. It's as simple as that. And if we're going to take on a project, we're going to try our damn hardest to get it done for when we've said we're going to get it done. So it's a balancing act. It really is.
And then just keeping that communication up as well. So when things do change, the client is kept in the
right
loop.
through the process. Yeah,
exactly. Particularly around council and things that are third party and out of our control. It is what it is.
And there have been quite a lot of that happening as far as councils go recently too. There's a lot of movement of staff and part of building and planning teams across different councils at the moment. So while that kind of happens and people are moving, and it means that councils are also under the pump because, one, they're already overloaded with council applications going through, but now they've also got that pressure of not having enough team to be able to see to those applications.
Which is exactly what we were talking about at the start, something that's on a large business level. So, okay, so the good news for us was it doesn't go away. It doesn't matter if our team is
does not go away. No,
200. No. It's going to be an issue. So the good news for this for us is we're always going to be letting people down. The quicker we get used to it, the better off we'll be. Oh, dear me. All right, well, on that note.